Picture this, the year is 2026, and we're standing right at the edge of this unprecedented structural inflection point in the global economy.
Yeah, it's really not just a technological shift anymore.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Like you aren't just watching a new gadget come out, you are watching the fundamental rewriting of how human value is calculated. And today, we're going to test that reality against a really fascinating white paper on Latin America's AI inflection point.
Right. The document is titled The Sovereign Human Initiative.
Yeah, and the data inside is just staggering. So I want to kick off with a paradox that immediately caught my attention when I was reading this. The source cites a 2026 Morgan Stanley report, and it details how companies that are deploying AI are seeing an average productivity gain of 11.5%.
Which is huge.
A massive jump in efficiency.
Yeah.
But, and here's the paradox, they are achieving these gains while simultaneously executing workforce reductions.
Right.
The very tools that are driving the productivity are eliminating the people who used to do the producing.
And that completely upends the core economic assumption we've held for, a century. Historically, if a company becomes 11.5% more productive, they use that momentum to expand. Like they hire more people to scale that newfound productivity. The productivity historically funded the expansion,
Right.
But in this 2026 scenario, the productivity actually is the reduction.
Okay, let's unpack this because the irony here is just glaring. The white paper points out that tech hubs across Latin America, places like São Paulo, Mexico City, Bogota, Buenos Aires, they're practically throwing street parties celebrating new unicorn company valuation.
Yeah, the capital is definitely flowing.
It is. The founders are getting rich. The financial press is glowing about it. Yet the very people working in those cities, the white-collar professionals who, help build that ecosystem, they're losing their jobs to the tech that's driving those massive valuations.
Exactly. We are looking at a fundamental decoupling of corporate success from human employment. And the white paper assigns a very specific term to the economic shape this creates.
Right, the K-shape.
Yes. They call it the K-shaped economy. So if you visualize the letter K, you have a vertical line and then two branches splitting off from the middle. One branch shoots sharply upward and the other points steeply downward.
So the upward line being the winners in this structural shift, like the exploding corporate profits, the massive platform valuations, and the heavy investments pouring into these tech hubs. Capital is basically concentrating and accelerating upward.
Right. That's the top of the K.
But I really want to focus on the downward line of that K.
Yeah, and the downward line is made up of human capital, displaced professionals, frozen hiring for new university graduates. It's a growing middle class facing exponential disruption.
Wow.
The source gives us some pretty vivid examples to ground this, too. We're talking about the financial analyst sitting at a desk in São Paulo, or the BPO, that's business process outsourcing manager working in Bogota, or even the manufacturing supervisor on a factory floor in Monterey.
So let's actually walk through the mechanism of this.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really easy to just say, oh, AI absorbs tasks without realizing what that actually looks like on a Tuesday morning at the office.
Yeah, it's very abstract until it's your job.
Exactly. Like previously, a tech boom meant giving that financial analyst in São Paulo a better tool. When we moved from abacuses to spreadsheets, the analyst got much faster. But you still absolutely needed the analyst to, gather the data, build the model, write the summary, and present it.
Right. That was the era of augmentation. The tool made the human faster. But artificial intelligence, however, operates on the principle of
Absorption.
Yeah, think about that financial analyst today. An AI agent doesn't just calculate the cells in a spreadsheet faster. The AI is instructed to pull the live global market data, run 3 different predictive forecasting models, isolate the anomalies, draft a 12-page summary report tailored to the CEO's reading style. Oh, wow.
And generate the accompanying slide deck. It completes the entire cognitive workflow in about 45 seconds.
That's insane.
So the productivity isn't coming from making the worker faster. It's coming from bypassing the worker entirely. What's fascinating here is that this isn't a temporary glitch. It is a built-in structural feature of the AI productivity era.
It really seems to me that Latin America is uniquely vulnerable here then, because their entire economic growth model over the last decade or two was heavily built on human-powered outsourcing. If AI can do the cognitive heavy lifting, their whole economic engine just stalls.
It does. And that is the first of 3 massive intersecting forces the authors outlined. They actually call it a triple threat.
Okay, let's go through the triple threat.
Sure. So Latin America's formal economy is heavily anchored by its business process outsourcing and shared services sector. This is a sector valued at over $12 billion.
12 billion. Yeah. For decades, companies in the US or Europe outsourced their customer service, IT support, and, data processing to countries with highly educated, often bilingual workforces and lower costs of living.
Right. But large language models don't care about time zones, and they certainly don't care about regional labor arbitrages. An advanced AI can handle 10,000 angry customer support calls simultaneously.
Exactly.
And it does it in perfect regional Colombian Spanish, resolving issues without ever needing a coffee break or a healthcare plan.
Which is terrifying for those workers. And that leads directly into the second force compounding this crisis, which is the historic nearshoring trend.
Oh, right, nearshoring.
Yeah, multinational corporations are actively moving their supply chains closer to the U.S. They're pulling manufacturing out of Asia and bringing it into places like Mexico.
But wait, let me jump in there. Because nearshoring is heavily pitched in the business news as a massive, historic win for Latin America. Billions of dollars of foreign investment are pouring in. How can a massive influx of capital actually be a threat?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the paradox becomes really clear when you look at how that capital is being deployed.
Okay.
Yes, nearshoring brings historic levels of investment. But because we are in the AI productivity era, that investment is arriving highly automated.
Oh, I see.
When a multinational company builds a new manufacturing facility in Monterrey in 2026, they aren't building a 1990s-style factory that requires 5,000 human workers on an assembly line.
Right. They're building a state-of-the-art facility.
Exactly. An AI-driven facility. You might have autonomous drones handling logistics, robotic arms doing the assembly, and AI computer vision systems handling quality control.
Wow.
So you get the multi-million-dollar capital investment, but the facility might only employ like 50 human technicians walking around with tablets. The thousands of middle-class jobs that historically came with industrial expansion simply vanish.
To use that broken escalator analogy, the capital investment shoots up the top arm of the K-shape, but the job creation curve slides down the bottom arm.
Yeah, exactly. Which brings us to the third intersecting force, and arguably the most dangerous one, which is chronic structural inequality.
Right.
In Latin America, the informal economy, so people working completely outside of regulated, taxed, formal employment, it makes up a staggering 56% of the region's workforce.
56%.
Right.
So over half the workforce is operating without a safety net, without benefits, just surviving day to day in the street vending or gig economy.
Exactly. And when that $12 billion BPO sector takes a hit, or when those automated nearshored factories fail to create jobs, the displaced formal sector professionals cannot simply be absorbed by the informal economy.
Because it's already full.
Right. You can't take a displaced corporate manager and push them into the gig economy without causing a catastrophic collapse in middle-class living standards. The structural inequality means there is no economic cushion. The downward slope of the K drops right off a cliff.
Man, if the system lacks a safety net, I'm honestly terrified to know who is actually standing closest to the edge. Let's dive into the granular data, because the white paper cites the Anthropic Economic Index from March 2026.
Oh, yeah, the task coverage data.
Right. This index measures task coverage, which quite literally defines what percentage of a human's daily professional tasks the AI can currently execute autonomously.
And the numbers in that index show exactly who is taking the direct hit right now.
Okay, so according to the March 2026 data, AI task coverage for data entry specialists is at 67%.
That's 2/3 of their job.
For customer service representatives, it's hitting 70%.
Which directly attacks that BPO sector we talked about.
Exactly. And financial analysts are at 57% task coverage. But here's where it gets really interesting. Computer programmers are facing a task coverage rate of 75%.
Yeah, that one usually shocks people.
Let me pose a question to you because, computer programmers are the ones building and implementing this very AI. Are the architects of the AI era effectively automating themselves out of a job first?
It's the ultimate irony of the information age, isn't it? Coding, at its core, is fundamentally about logic, pattern recognition, and language syntax. And large language models excel at exactly those three things.
Right, that's their bread and butter.
Yeah. A significant portion of mid-level programming involves writing boilerplate code, hunting for syntax bugs, or, integrating standard APIs. The AI does that in its sleep.
So the data strongly suggests that the people who wrote the code are finding that the code can now write itself faster with fewer errors.
Precisely. The roles most exposed to AI are concentrated in exactly the professional and service sectors that anchor Latin America's formal economy. The white-collar knowledge workers who did everything right according to the old rules are the ones losing their footing.
Yeah, they did everything right. They went to school, they got the degrees, they learned to code, they played by the rules of the system.
And the white paper emphasizes a crucial philosophical distinction here. These professionals on the downward slope of the K are not failing.
No, not at all.
They are highly capable, intelligent individuals. They're being failed by an education and employment infrastructure that was built for an industrial era that has officially ended.
Well, failed by the infrastructure.
Yeah, the industrial system trained them to be highly efficient processors of information. But now, the machine processes its own information. The infrastructure itself is obsolete, not the people.
Okay, so if the track is broken, where do we go? I mean, we can't just stop at diagnosing a broken system. The white paper presents a very specific window of opportunity, right?
It does. It talks about the brief, critical period of time between massive job displacement and eventual reabsorption.
And the authors argue that this displacement creates an unprecedented availability of highly educated, capable minds. The goal is to redirect them from what the paper calls old economy dependency to new economy proprietorship.
Right. And let's define those terms. Old economy dependency means relying on a corporation to rent your brain for 40 hours a week to process their data.
Just a cog in the machine.
Exactly. New economy proprietorship means owning your own value, leveraging AI to build your own ventures, and becoming a creator rather than a processor. But, you cannot make that leap in a vacuum.
No, you need an entirely new kind of infrastructure to train people for that reality.
And this raises an important question. What does that infrastructure actually look like?
Well, the source material details the architects behind this new infrastructure, EON Reality and EON AI Ventures. And apparently they've spent over 25 years building a platform specifically for this moment.
Yeah, they saw this coming.
It's an immersive, AI-native, globally accredited learning and venture creation platform. And the scale is just massive. They're operating in over 80 countries, with 4,400 institutional customers and over 136 million platform users.
It's a huge footprint.
And the ultimate deployment of this platform is what the white paper calls the Sovereign Human Initiative. But wait, don't just give me the user numbers.
Okay.
If I'm a displaced BPO worker in Bogota, how does logging into EON Reality actually turn me into an entrepreneur? What am I actually doing on this platform to become a proprietor?
Well, the mechanism of the platform is what changes the game. When that displaced worker logs in, they are no longer entering a traditional classroom to learn how to write code for a boss.
Thank goodness.
Right. They enter an AI-native spatial computing environment. So let's say that worker notices a local logistics company in Bogota is struggling with supply chain bottlenecks.
Okay, a real-world problem.
On the EON platform, the worker acts as a CEO. They instruct the platform's AI agents to instantly build a 3D digital twin of that warehouse and generate a spatial AI training module to optimize the workflow.
Just by instructing the AI?
Yes. The AI writes the code, builds the 3D assets, and formats the application. The human worker provides the creative intent, the local market knowledge, and the strategic direction.
That's incredible.
And then EON provides the venture framework, the accreditation, and the global marketplace to monetize that solution.
So they are transitioning from being a data processor for a massive corporation to basically the director of their own micro-enterprise, using AI as their, unpaid co-founders.
Precisely. It scales the ability to create value down to the individual level. It empowers millions of people to use AI as a tool for rapid entrepreneurship rather than being replaced by it.
Yeah.
But it requires deliberate, immediate intervention from governments and institutions to adopt these scalable platforms.
Because trying to survive the 2026 AI inflection point with an industrial era education is honestly, it's like trying to run modern generative AI software on a clunky 1990s desktop computer.
That's a great analogy.
Right. You just need an entirely new operating system.
Yeah.
You're on a train, stuck on a track. It doesn't matter how fast the train goes. If the tracks lead to a destination that no longer exists, you are going to crash.
Yeah, the Sovereign Human Initiative isn't offering a faster train. It's offering an off-road vehicle. It's an entirely new mechanism for navigating an unpredictable economic landscape.
And if societies do nothing?
If societies do nothing, the K-shape just continues to widen. Capital accelerates upward, and the human workforce continues its freefall. The intervention has to match the scale of the disruption.
So what does this all mean for you listening? I mean, if you are sitting in a corporate job right now, you might not live in São Paulo or Monterey. You might not work in a $12 billion BPO sector.
Right.
But the mechanics of this K-shaped AI economy, the total separation of corporate productivity from human labor, are universal. It does not respect geographic borders or industry lines.
No, it's coming for everyone.
The Sovereign Human Initiative represents a global blueprint for how individuals and nations just fundamentally must radically upgrade their learning infrastructure to survive this era.
And, the ultimate irony to ponder is this. As AI completely takes over the processing of data, the coding of software, and the drafting of reports, the most valuable skills in the 2030 economy might not be technological at all.
Really? What would they be?
They might be the deeply human traits we stopped prioritizing centuries ago, like philosophy, complex empathy, and raw, unpredictable imagination. The white paper makes it painfully clear that education and employment systems built for the industrial era are actively failing professionals right now.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, what hidden industrial era assumptions are you still secretly relying on in your own daily career planning? And how quickly do you need to rewrite them before your own industry reaches its inflection point?
Wow. That is exactly the question we need to be asking ourselves as we navigate this inflection point.
Yeah.
Because if your career strategy is still anchored to the industrial era, it is time for a radical upgrade. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Keep questioning the systems around you. Keep looking for the underlying mechanics. And most importantly, keep learning. Until next time.